Welcome, boys and girls, to your video lesson on percent of a number. So your job is that you can calculate any percent of a given number or find out what percent a number is out of another number. So we're dealing with fractions and decimals and percents again. So in this lesson, the word of means multiply and the word is means equals. So there are two methods that we can do to find percent of a number, and that is write the percent as a fraction and multiply, or write the percent as a decimal and multiply. So we're dealing with those fraction, decimal, percent equivalencies that we've looked at before, and we'll continue to practice. So method one would be as a fraction. So if we're finding 5% of 300, well, first I can find that 5% is the same as 5 out of 100. As you recall, percent means per 100, and that is the same as 1/20th if I simplify it. So what I'm really looking for is 1/20th of 300, and I remember that of is multiplication, so I'm looking for 1/20th of 300, and I write whole numbers over 1. So I can cross cancel or multiply across, so this really is 300 over 20. 20 goes into both of those numbers. That's the same as 15. So that means that 15 is 5% of 300. It's a reasonable answer because 10% of 300 would be 30. So doing a decimal, so then we just find 5% as a decimal. Again, that's the same as 5/100ths, which if I read that as a decimal is 5/100ths in the hundredths place. So I'm really looking for 5% of 300, which again I get 15. Okay, so these are your two methods. You might want to write those down. So examples, round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So we're looking for 10% of 50. Try as many as you'd like, and I will fill them in. And some of them I might just write answers, and you can check your accuracy. 10% again, I could either do 0.1 of 50, or 10% is 1/10 of 50. I know that 50 over 10 is 5. 40% is the same, that's 40 out of 100, which is the same as 2/5 simplified all the way. So I'm looking for 2/5 of 120. This now you're multiplying fractions. So we're using a lot of old skills. So I go, no, 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 100 20 times, and it goes into 24 times. So 24 times 2 is 48. So that means that 40% of 120 is 48. 35% again, I could either use the decimal or a fraction, 35 out of 100, which simplified, 5 goes into both. That's the same as 7/20ths of 90. So 10 goes in here 2 times, 10 goes in here 9 times. So I have 7 times 9, which is 63, over 2 times 1. 63 divided by 2 is 31.5. So 31.5 is 35% of 90. So we're using very much old skills to apply to this new one. So give some of these a try, please. 12%, again I can do 0.12 times 12. Or 12 out of 100, which is the same as 6/50ths, or 4 goes into both, so 3/25ths out of 12, which is the same as 36/25ths. Simplifies, 25 goes in there once, 11 rather, 25ths. 60%. These are, remember that fraction, decimal, and percent equivalence chart would be helpful. So this is 3/5 of 264. And you can keep going like this. So I can either multiply across or multiply by the decimal. I find out that 60% of 264 is 158.4. So I'm going to do some of these. Remember to write as a decimal is 2 decimal places to the left, dividing by 100 essentially. And you can try those. And sometimes it's just way more convenient to do a decimal, and sometimes it's more convenient to do a fraction. Like here, I'm going to want to use that decimal, and I get 6. This one I'm going to want to use a decimal and my calculator. Make sure that you're multiplying because you're looking for a percent of. The reason it makes sense, think about why it makes sense that we're finding multiplying by decimals and getting smaller numbers for the most part. So this is tricky because some people might do 0.25, but that would be 25%. Remember to divide by 100, and you move that decimal 2 places to the left. So you're actually doing 0.0025 times 900 for 2.25, and that makes sense because it's a really small number out of 900 because it's a really small percent. Same thing, move the decimal 2 places. Times 220. For 3.3. If I made any mistakes, please let me know. Sometimes you're going to see percents greater than 100. So remember, if I find a percent less than 100, if I'm finding half of something or 50%, it's going to be less than 1 whole. So when I'm dealing with percents more than, my answer should be a little bit more than 100%. So, because if I move the decimal 2 places, that's the same as 1.2, 1 2/10, times 75, if I use the decimal method. And when I do that, I get 90. As a fraction, it's 120 over 100 times 75. And again, I can simplify this. So this is the same as 6/5 times 75. 5 goes in there once, 5 goes in there 15 times. 15 times 6 is 90. So either way still works. And the answer should be more than what I started with. Give these two a try. So I'll do a couple decimal, a couple fractions. So 150% is 150 over 100, which is the same as 15 over 10, which is the same as divide by 5, 3 halves. So we're looking for really 3 halves of 20, which is 30. Try in the decimal way. 160 is the same as 1 6/10, 1.6, times 35. So our answer should be a little bit more than 35. It's really 100% of 35 and 60% more. There we go. Last one, a little word problem, real life for you. So referring to this chart or graph, if 275 students took a survey, how many would be expected to have 3 televisions in their home? So based on this is the number of televisions in a home and the percent of people that responded, and we're looking for 3. So what we notice is that 23% of students have television in their homes. So we have 23%, as a decimal. So it's 23% of the number of people surveyed. How many is that would have that? So I choose my decimal in this case. Anytime the numbers aren't compatible with 100 or easy to reduce, I kind of choose the decimal. That's my preference. So I get 63.25. Well, I can't have 63 and a quarter person, so I would say approximately 63 students. Very last one for you to try. If you'd like, pause me here. Using the graph, what if 455 students took a survey? How many can we expect to have more than 4 televisions? So that's not just including 4. That's including the more than 4. So I have 25%. So I'm saying, what is 25% of 455? You wouldn't put the percent if I already made a decimal. This might be one where it's easy to do 1/4, too. So you could do 1/4 of 455, either way. When I do that, I find out that it's 113 and 75/100ths, which since it's people, we could round up and say approximately 114 people or students. So remembering, percents need to be written as decimals if you're going to do that way, and percent fractions are out of 100. Good luck, rewatch, use the book, online, do your best, come with questions, make sure your notes look good.